February 19th, 1932, 4:27 in the morning. Al Capone sat in his suite at the Lexington Hotel in Chicago, reading a telegram that made his blood boil. The message was short, direct, insulting. Your operations in Harlem are finished. Your men are not welcome. Do not send more. Bumpy Johnson. Capone crumpled the telegram in his fist. He was the most powerful gangster in America. He controlled Chicago, had operations in dozens of cities, made millions from bootlegging during Prohibition. Politicians feared him. Police took his money. Even the federal government struggled to touch him. And now some Negro gangster from Harlem was telling him his operations were finished. Capone called his enforcer, Frank Needy, into the room. I want you to take 16 men to New York, the best killers we have. I want this Bumpy Johnson problem solved permanently. I don't care how you do it. Kill him. Kill his crew. Burn down his operations. Show Harlem what happens when someone disrespects Al Capone. 17 men total? Needy asked. That's a small army. This Negro thinks he can challenge me. I'm sending overwhelming force. When you're done, I want Harlem to know that Al Capone owns every city in America, including theirs. Needy assembled his crew within hours. 16 of Chicago's deadliest hitmen. Men who'd survived the beer wars, who'd killed for Capone during gang conflicts, who knew how to use Thompson submachine guns, and weren't afraid of dying. They left Chicago on the afternoon train. 17 men heading to New York to kill one man and anyone standing beside him. What Al Capone didn't know, what Frank Needy couldn't have predicted, was that Bumpy Johnson had been preparing for this moment for 6 months. He had known Capone would eventually respond to being pushed out of Harlem, and had turned the entire neighborhood into a fortress designed to destroy anyone foolish enough to attack. By the time the sun rose on February 21st, 16 men would be dead. This is the story of how Bumpy Johnson went to war with America's most famous gangster and won. To understand what happened, you need to go back 6 months to August of 1931. Al Capone had been expanding his bootlegging empire across America. Chicago was his base, but he had operations in New York, Detroit, Kansas City, Miami. Anywhere people wanted illegal alcohol, Capone provided it. In Harlem, Capone's representatives had set up distribution networks for bootleg whiskey and gin. They worked with local dealers, paid off police, moved product through speakeasies and underground clubs. It was profitable, organized, running smoothly, until Bumpy Johnson decided it wasn't. Bumpy was 31 years old in 1931. He'd been working his way up through Harlem's Underworld for 8 years, learning from Stephanie Street Claire, building his own network, establishing himself as someone who protected the neighborhood rather than exploited it. And he saw Capone's operation as exploitation. The bootleg liquor was low quality, often dangerous. The prices were too high for working families. The dealers were violent, disrespectful to Harlem residents, and all the money flowed back to Chicago instead of staying in the community. Bumpy started interfering with Capone's operations. Quietly at first, shipments would disappear. Dealers would get arrested. Speakeasies would suddenly face health inspections. Small disruptions that cost Capone money and created headaches. Capone sent a representative to negotiate. A man named Johnny Torrio, one of Capone's mentors, flew to New York to meet with Bumpy. Mr. Johnson, Mr. Capone respects what you've built in Harlem. He's not trying to take over your operations. He just wants to sell his product through established channels. There's room for both of us to make money. There's no room for Capone in Harlem, Bumpy said flatly. His liquor is poison. His dealers are thugs. His money leaves the community. I want him out. You're making a mistake. Mr. Capone is not a man you want as an enemy. Then he should stay in Chicago. Harlem is mine. Torrio reported back to Capone. Try to convince him to pull out of Harlem. Focus on more profitable markets. But Capone saw Bumpy's resistance as a challenge to his authority. If one neighborhood could push him out, others would try. He had to make an example. He sent more men, 12 enforcers from Chicago, to take over Capone's Harlem operations by force. They arrived in September of 1931 with orders to intimidate anyone working with Bumpy, to establish Capone's dominance through violence if necessary. Within 2 weeks, all 12 men were either dead or had fled back to Chicago. Bumpy's crew hunted them systematically. Ambushes in alleys, shootouts in speakeasies, bodies found in the East River. It wasn't war. It was extermination. That's when Capone sent the telegram demanding Bumpy stop interfering. And Bumpy sent back the response that set everything in motion. Your operations in Harlem are finished. Your men are not welcome. Do not send more. For Al Capone, this was unacceptable. He'd built an empire on the principle that nobody tells Al Capone no. Bumpy Johnson was about to learn that lesson the hard way. February 20th, 1932. Frank Needy and 16 men arrived at Grand Central Terminal in Manhattan. They looked like businessmen in their long coats and fedoras. Nobody would guess they were carrying Thompson submachine guns, pistols, grenades. Nobody would suspect they were in New York to start a war. Needy had planned the operation carefully. They'd hit multiple targets simultaneously. Bumpy's operations weren't centralized in one place. He had policy banks across Harlem, speakeasies, numbers runners, a network spread over dozens of locations. Needy divided his men into 3 teams. Team 1 would hit the Red Rooster Club, where Bumpy conducted business. Team 2 would target the policy banks on 135th Street. Team 3 would attack Bumpy's apartment. What Needy didn't know was that Bumpy had informants everywhere. One of them was a porter at Grand Central Terminal who recognized Chicago accents and suspicious behavior. He saw 17 men arrive together, noticed how they moved like soldiers, spotted one man's coat open far enough to glimpse a weapon underneath. The porter made a phone call to a number he'd been given 6 months ago. Chicago men just arrived. 17 of them. Looked like trouble. The call reached Bumpy at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, 6 hours before Needy planned to strike. Bumpy assembled his crew at the Red Rooster. Illinois Gordon, Willie Fish Jackson, Raymond Quick Lewis, Claude Sandman Baptiste, Jerome the photographer, and 12 others. 18 men total to face Capone's 17. Al Capone sent men from Chicago, Bumpy said. They're here to kill us, destroy our operations, take over Harlem. We're not going to let that happen. How many? Illinois asked. 17 professionals. They'll be carrying Thompsons, probably grenades. They'll hit hard and fast at multiple locations. So what do? We evacuate the targets. Empty the policy banks. Close the Red Rooster. Get my family out of the apartment. Then we set traps. We let them attack empty buildings while we position ourselves to kill them when they realize there's nothing there. You want to ambush them? I want to destroy them. Every single one. I want to send a message back to Al Capone that's so clear, so brutal, that he never thinks about Harlem again. Over the next 3 hours, Bumpy's organization executed a strategic evacuation. Money and records moved from the policy banks to safe locations. The Red Rooster was emptied of employees and patrons. Bumpy's wife and mother-in-law went to stay with family in Brooklyn. By 7 in the evening, all 3 of Capone's targets were empty, but they didn't look empty. Lights were on. Music played in the Red Rooster. Silhouettes moved behind windows, created by clever positioning of clothes on mannequins. From outside, Bumpy positioned his men in surrounding buildings with clear lines of sight to the targets. Rooftops, apartments across the street, adjacent storefronts. 18 men with weapons and patience, waiting for Capone's crew to walk into the trap. Team 1, 6 men led by a Chicago enforcer named Sal Benedetto, approached the Red Rooster Club. They'd been watching the building for 30 minutes. Saw lights on, heard music, saw shadows moving inside. They assumed Bumpy and his crew were there conducting business as usual. Remember, we want Johnson alive if possible, Sal told his team. Capone wants him brought back to Chicago, but if he fights, kill him. Either way, we're taking control of this club tonight. They burst through the front door with Thompsons ready. Found an empty room. The music was coming from a phonograph playing by itself. The silhouettes in the windows were clothes on dress forms. Nobody was there. It's a trap. Sal screamed. Get out. But getting out meant going back through the door they'd entered, and Bumpy's men were positioned in buildings across the street with perfect angles on that entrance. Illinois Gordon opened fire first. His Thompson roared from a 3rd-floor window. Willie Jackson fired from a rooftop. Raymond from a storefront. Crossfire from 3 directions converging on the Red Rooster's entrance. Sal's team tried to return fire, but they were exposed, caught in the open doorway with nowhere to hide. The Thompson rounds tore through them. One man dropped immediately. Another tried to run back inside and took bullets in the back. Sal himself made it 3 steps before going down. The firefight lasted 90 seconds. When it ended, all 6 men from Team 1 were dead in the street. Team 2, 6 men led by a hitman named Angelo Marino, moved on the policy banks on 135th Street. There were 3 buildings next to each other, all supposedly running illegal lottery operations for Bumpy's organization. Angelo's team planned to firebomb all 3, destroy the evidence, kill anyone inside. They carried bottles filled with gasoline, rags stuffed in the necks, ready to light and throw. They lit the first Molotov cocktail and threw it through the window of the first building. Glass shattered. Flames erupted inside. They moved to the second building. That's when they realized the buildings were empty. No screaming, no people running out. Just fire spreading through vacant rooms. They knew we were coming, Angelo said. Somebody tipped them off. From the rooftop above them, Claude Sandman Baptiste and 3 others opened fire with rifles. Not automatic weapons, just bolt-action rifles with good scopes. Precise, careful shots. Angelo's team scattered, looking for cover, but they were on an open street with nowhere to hide. The riflemen picked them off methodically. One man tried to run and took a bullet in the leg, fell, and took another in the chest. Angelo himself made it to an alley before Raymond Quick Lewis stepped out from the shadows with a shotgun. Message from Bumpy Johnson, Raymond said, and pulled the trigger. 6 more dead. Team 2 eliminated. Team 3, 5 men led by Frank Needy himself, approached Bumpy's apartment building on Edgecombe Avenue. Needy was more careful than the other team leaders. He'd heard gunfire from other parts of Harlem, knew something had gone wrong, suspected his teams might have walked into traps. But he had his orders from Capone. Kill Bumpy Johnson. Needy wasn't going back to Chicago without completing the mission or confirming it was impossible. They entered the building quietly, took the stairs to the 5th floor where Bumpy's apartment was located, found the door unlocked, went inside with guns drawn. Empty. Furniture, clothes, personal items, but no people. The family had been evacuated hours ago. Needy knew he was right, but leaving meant admitting failure. Meant going back to Al Capone and saying Bumpy Johnson had outplayed them. That's when Bumpy Johnson walked through the apartment door, not bursting in with guns blazing. Just walked in calmly, hands visible, no weapons drawn. Behind him were Illinois Gordon and Willie Jackson, both armed but not aiming yet. Frank Needy, Bumpy said, Al Capone's right-hand man. I'm honored he sent you personally. Needy's 5 men aimed their weapons at Bumpy. 5 Thompsons pointed at one unarmed man. They should have fired immediately, should have killed him and left. But something in Bumpy's calm, in his complete lack of fear, made them hesitate. Your other 12 men are dead, Bumpy said conversationally. I have crews positioned all over Harlem. They've been hunting your teams all night. You're the last ones alive. You're lying, Needy said. Am I? Listen, the apartment was quiet. No distant gunfire. No sound of conflict. Just silence, because the killing was already done. I could have my men kill you right now, Bumpy continued. You're outnumbered. You're my territory. You walked into my home thinking I'd be here. But I'm not going to kill you, Frank. I'm going to let you live. You know why? Why? Because I need you to deliver a message to Al Capone. And dead men don't deliver messages. Nit is gutaitant. What message? Tell Capone that Harlem is not Chicago. Tell him he sent 17 professional killers and 16 of them died tonight. Tell him I let you live specifically so you could report back. Tell him if he ever sends anyone to Harlem again, I won't leave survivors next time. I'll kill them all and send their bodies back in boxes. Capone will never accept this. He'll send 100 men next time. Then I'll kill 100 men. Frank, you seem like a smart person. You understand strategy. So let me explain something. Capone is powerful in Chicago because he controls the police, the politicians, the infrastructure. He knows every street, every building, every person who matters. That's his strength. Bumpy walked closer, still not reaching for a weapon. But this is my city. I know every block in Harlem. I have people on every corner who tell me when strangers arrive. I have police on my payroll who warn me about raids. I have community support that Capone could never develop. This is my territory, and in my territory, I'm stronger than Al Capone. You're one man. Capone is an empire. Empires fall when they overextend. Capone can control Chicago. Maybe he can control other cities. But he can't control Harlem. Not through force, not through money, not through reputation. This neighborhood belongs to the people who live here, and I'm the one who protects them. Kill me, and 10 others will take my place. Send 100 men, and the community will hide us, warn us, help us fight. You can't conquer people who don't want to be conquered. Needy was silent. He'd been a gangster his entire adult life. Understood power, understood violence, and he understood that Bumpy was right. You couldn't hold territory when the population hated you. You couldn't operate when every resident was a potential informant working against you. What do you want from me? Needy asked. Walk out of here. Take your 4 men. Go back to Chicago. Tell Capone what happened. Tell him it's not personal, just business. His bootlegging operations can exist anywhere except Harlem. Simple. And if I refuse, if I try to kill you right now? Bumpy smiled. Then my men kill all 5 of you, and I send someone else to deliver the message. But you seem smarter than that. You seem like someone who knows when to fight and when to walk away. Needy looked at his 4 men, looked at Bumpy, looked at Illinois and Willie standing behind Bumpy with their Thompsons. He made a decision. Lower your weapons, Needy told his. So what do you recommend? Needy didn't hesitate. Pull out of Harlem completely. Cut our losses. Focus on markets we can actually control. Bumpy Johnson isn't bluffing. He's willing to die protecting that neighborhood, and the community will help him do it. We can't win that fight. Al Capone doesn't lose fights. We already lost this one. The question is whether we're smart enough to accept it and move on. Capone stood at that window for 5 full minutes. Nobody spoke. Finally, he turned around. You're right. We pull out of Harlem. Shut down all operations there. Let Johnson have his kingdom. But Frank, make sure every organization in America knows what happened. Make sure they know that challenging Al Capone costs lives. 16 of theirs, sure, but also 16 of ours. Nobody wins. Yes, sir. And Frank, don't ever mention this conversation again. As far as anyone knows, we decided Harlem wasn't profitable enough to maintain operations. We pulled out for business reasons, not because some Negro gangster beat us. But word spread anyway. In organized crime circles, you can't hide the deaths of 16 men. Questions were asked, stories were told, and eventually the truth came out. Bumpy Johnson had gone to war with Al Capone and won.